We're asking people to stay home if possible, practice social distancing, at least 6 feet apart.
When Boston Mayor Marty Walsh ordered a citywide shutdown in mid-March due to the escalating COVID-19 pandemic, residents holed up indoors and the streets quickly emptied, except for nearly 6,000 homeless residents who suddenly faced exposure to the virus in overcrowded temporary housing. Melissa Baker, one of the many who have struggled to follow social distancing guidelines, tested positive for COVID-19 earlier this year.
They tell you to quarantine yourself, but you're homeless, you can't quarantine.
The homeless population of Boston, already one of the most vulnerable groups for infectious disease, faces increased risks with the spread of COVID-19.
I'm afraid of getting corona. Corona will kill me. 64 years old. I'm definitely afraid of dying, okay?
The Massachusetts Stay-at-Home Advisory suddenly left volunteers and support staff limited in their accessibility, forcing those without a home to choose between overly dense shelters or sleeping on the streets. Homeless resources fell flat, restricted in their reach.
See, we sleep outside still because you have to go through a huge process to get into a shelter, and that's whether or not they accept you.
In April, a team of researchers at Massachusetts General Hospital tested all 800 residents of Southampton Shelter in the Pine Street Inn. They found a 36% positivity rate. That same week, the rate for the entire city of Boston was just 2%.
And what they found is just a really alarmingly high rate of folks who had COVID-19, many of whom were not symptomatic at all, but it was just sort of evidence of what a lot of folks had been saying, which was that folks who are experiencing homelessness are especially vulnerable to contracting COVID-19 because of the fact that in shelter, it's very difficult to maintain social distance.
Following mounting concerns over transmission in tight spaces, the city has been developing new strategies to de-densify their shelters. The Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program has been using tents to expand their capacity. Here, shelter residents can be screened for COVID and isolated if they test positive, making it easier for healthcare professionals to contain the virus.
So we reached out to the city provided the space and connected us with the construction team who built this really innovative tent system down on the parking lot of the Southampton shelter.
Jenny Yan was a medical assistant intern working in the BHCHP's outpatient clinic in March when the pandemic struck.
Who would have expected that we would need to ever do this, right? And they really had no precedent for it. And I was hearing that the nurses who got placed to work there actually sometimes felt more comfortable working there even than in our own clinic because they had more robust supplies of PPE there, since all the patients they were dealing with were either had suspected COVID exposure or had tested positive.
But almost 8 months into the pandemic, the challenges of life without stable housing are becoming clearer. Walter Bennett is in need of a surgery, but the procedure continues to be postponed since he has no place to safely recover afterwards.
I don't know what else to do. If I could rent a room, I did that before. I've owned my own home, but I don't have a lot of money. I don't have money anymore.
I think ultimately homelessness is a housing problem, and so the solution is more housing for folks. We wouldn't need carve-out solutions for this population or that population because it would just be, folks who had a safe, stable place to live. So,
with shelter capacity still limited, the city is looking for more long-term strategies to resolve chronic homelessness, especially as winter weather makes it almost impossible to live outside.
But the winter presents a complicated dynamic when you're trying to say to people, go inside, get off the streets, get out of the weather, but you need to tell them to do it in a safe place so they're not exposed to really dense environments where they could contract COVID.
Though the future of the COVID-19 pandemic remains unclear, The Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program, the city, and other community organizations continue their efforts to protect one of Boston's most vulnerable communities amid rising cases. Because the issues of the homeless did not start, nor will they end, with the pandemic.
The pandemic didn't make, it didn't create homelessness, it didn't create substance use disorder challenges in the city, it exacerbated them and kind of shined a light on them. You can't support homeless individuals by only focusing on the immediate. You have to focus on housing as well, which we do every single day.